There's a massive problem right now in the Catholic Church with our disposition towards the magisterium, with Catholics on the whole. It's as if we think we are in a position to constantly second guess, to constantly question, to constantly push back, to constantly critique, to constantly dissent from something that the church teaches authoritatively. That is not Catholicism. That is definitely not the traditional Catholic position. That is the spirit of Protestantism. That is not Catholicism. So I'm I'm afraid that a lot of us Catholics have this spirit of Protestantism still within us, and that we're not properly disposed to submit to the magisterium. There's a massive problem there. Our disposition is one of constantly scrutinizing and second guessing everything as if we're in a position to do so. Let me be frank, because I honestly think that we maybe need some tough love here. I've tried to be nice, but let's just cut to the chase. Frankly, most Catholics are not in a position theologically to critique the magisterium. They don't have that kind of ability. Let's just be frank. Most Catholics do not have the theological formation to critique the magisterium. Let's be honest. It's almost a joke to see somebody on Twitter who has almost no theological qualifications, attempting to scrutinize and even critique magisterial documents. It's almost a joke. And it shows a great deal of hubris and arrogance on our part that we think we're somehow in that position when we're not. Most of us don't even know where to go to find a magisterial document, let alone read it properly, let alone critique it. If you ask the average Catholic who's critiquing the magisterium today, hey, okay, well, where's the actual document itself? They wouldn't know where to go. And if they did, again, are they even in a position to ascertain whether or not it's actually authoritative and what is it is actually saying, and then why it's wrong if it's wrong? Um, the disposition of the Catholic towards the magisterium traditionally has been one of docility, being willing to learn, being willing to be taught, to recognize that we are the ones being taught and the magisterium is the teacher, not the other way around. We are not the teachers. We do not get to tell the magisterium, here's what it is. Rather, it's the magisterium that tells us, and we have a disposition of docility and religious submission of intellect and will, obedience to its disciplinary judgments, and submission by way of the intellect and will to its teachings. That is traditional Catholicism. Traditional Catholicism also teaches that to publicly push back against what the church is teaching, to dissent from it, is a grave sin. That is traditional Catholicism. And so what we're doing on social media practically every day when we constantly accuse the magisterium of teaching heresy is a grave sin. It is grave matter. That, for instance, is something taught by Pope Pius X. If you want a quick reference for that you could go and look up, it's Denzinger 2113. You can see that there, where Pius X speaks about a grave guilt that is incurred on a Catholic who does not submit to magisterial teachings, even when they are non-infallible. Grave guilt. This is why most of the manualists were entirely against any form of public dissent. And they would also teach that the teachings of the magisterium, even when they're non-infallible, are morally certain. In other words, you can be morally certain that even in the instances where the magisterium teaches non-infallibly, that it is teaching truthfully. Why? Because as Pope Pius XII notes, even when the church is teaching non-infallibly, it speaks with the voice of Jesus. It's an interesting concept, right? Jesus's words, he who hears you hears me, he who doesn't hear you does not hear me or him who sent me. Those words are taken by Pope Pius XII and applied to the papal magisterium whenever the Pope teaches non-infallibly. So what we're doing when we're constantly second guessing and scrutinizing everything from the magisterium is we're doing that to Jesus and his teaching authority. And that's what we don't realize. That's why I say we have a Protestant spirit within many of us Catholics. There's something odd going on here where we've lost this ability to be docile and to submit to the teaching authority of the church that speaks with the voice of Jesus Christ. I also want to point out Pope Pius X, the same Pope Pius who fought against modernism, and the same one that just spoke of grave guilt for people who are dissenting against the magisterium, also notes that one is not holy if they dissent from the Pope. That's his words, not mine. That's Pope Pius X, the hammer of heretics. The one who single-handedly destroyed the modernists. I mean, we still have remnants of them today in neo-modernism. But he did a pretty good job at combating modernism, if you ask me. And this same hammer of heretics, especially of the heresy of modernism, says, whoever is holy cannot dissent from the Pope. That's a direct quote. So don't tell me, oh, this holy cardinal, oh, this holy bishop, they're so holy and pious. When they're dissenting from the papal magisterium and even accusing it of heresy, please don't talk to me about their sanctity. When Pope Pius X, very much a man of sanctity, says that's not sanctity, that's the spirit of rebellion. And Catholics who are following this are embracing the spirit of rebellion. I'll do a whole show pretty soon going over the question of public dissent in more detail than I have so far. So stay tuned for that. But hopefully this will kind of hold you over some of the things that I've addressed here and give you a few things to think about. And maybe some things that you can point out to others whenever you start to see them dissent from this, or even say things like, isn't this heresy? I want to say to such people, are you kidding me right now? Do you really think that you're in a position to determine whether or not the magisterium is teaching heresy? Are you serious right now? I'm sorry, but most people don't have that kind of theological formation. And for the few who do, Donum Veritatis is the document for you, and it tells you on how to handle situations where you think that the magisterium is in error. It gives specific guidelines, and it is magisterial. It is authoritative. It is binding on one's conscience. It gives you the specific instructions for a well-trained theologian on how to approach and criticize deficiencies found within the magisterium. But again, frankly, most of us are not in that position. We're not well-trained theologians. And so I think a little bit more humility is required on our part whenever we are confronted with what the magisterium teaches. I'm not talking about criticizing or dissenting from something that the Pope says in his private person. One is free to do that. I'm talking about us constantly scrutinizing, second guessing, and even claiming that the magisterium teaches error whenever it teaches authoritatively. Whenever the Pope teaches authoritatively in his magisterium with the voice of Jesus Christ, even when it is non-infallible.
Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy, and engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today.